as a Republican, I can say that Newsom sweeped Hannity? Wow. As a born and raised Californian, I thought I hated Newsom until this interview. Hannity should be applauded. He managed to go 25 minutes without bringing up Hillary Clinton or Hunter Biden's laptop. Man. Okay, let's watch this. Apparently, Newsom wrecked house. Let's watch.
And welcome to Hannity, and tonight we're going to take you inside one of the most liberal executive mansions in America for an exclusive interview with California Governor Gavin Newsom. Now, no topic was off the table, no restrictions at all whatsoever.
Can I just say, by the way, I like Democrats going into hostile environments, being willing to do that, talking to audiences that traditionally wouldn't listen to their talking points, and going in there and hammering their points, if they can do it well, at least, and they're not literally a clown and they're bad with rhetoric. So first off, I just want to commend Gavin Newsom for doing this in the first place, even if he's way too milquetoast for me. If you would ask, like, oh, who's your favorite Democrat? He's not. Or like, oh, who's your type of Democrat? Like, I mean, he's more progressive than Biden, but like, he's still much more milquetoast than I would have wanted for, you know, my ideal Democrat. But immense credit for doing this. I always appreciate when people do that. I liked it when Bernie did it, and I like it when he did it. As long as you know what you're doing, you go in prepared and don't make a fool of yourself.
However, I did promise the governor that I would give him a chance to respond to each question without interruption. So, especially in the beginning of the interview,
that's a good stipulation. Look, I'll do your interview if you let me talk without interruption. Because if you watch a Piers Morgan interview, have you guys actually, I know a lot of you guys aren't British, so you probably don't watch Piers Morgan as much as most, a lot of Britbongers do. But Piers Morgan, one of the things I really hate about his show is that he'll just constantly interrupt before the person can ever get their point out. And I understand at some points you have to interrupt because of commercial breaks and you only have so much time. But it was excessive to the point of making him look like a prick, and excessive to the point where it was hard for me to even understand what the position of who he was talking with was.
Is less debate-oriented. It's a little more debate-oriented as the interview goes on. And as you might imagine, well, Governor Newsom and I strongly disagree on pretty much everything. But to the governor's credit, he did sit down for an entire hour. He answered most of our questions. And by the way, that was something that the president of the United States, Joe Biden, is not even remotely capable of doing. So without further ado, here is part one of my interview with California's Democratic Governor, Gavin Newsom. All right, so I write you. This pick got a lot of pickup, I'm sure you saw as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I want to do an interview.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do an interview. I want to make sure the audience understands up front. This is not going to be me. I want you to answer and give your views. I would say you represent probably about half the country, your views, and the other half represents mine. You agree? We're kind of divided.
Plus or minus, certainly divided. Yeah. No question. I mean, we're polarized, we're traumatized. We clearly are in these, and we're in these echo chambers. I mean, let's be candid, Sean. I mean, your folks are watching you and getting a certain perspective, and my folks are watching other networks getting a certain perspective as well.
We have studies that show a lot of Democrats watch me.
Well, including me. So I'm here for a reason. To wit the point, though, I think we need more of that cross-pollination. We need more of these kind of conversations, and we need to not just accuse each other of misleading the American people, but I think confront each other in the context of providing opportunities to address some of the facts that are often omitted in terms of the conversations and topics we choose to pick up.
So what I see is, I don't know how you reconcile some of these differences. Now, you either believe in secure borders and law and order, and people that want to come into our country have to do it legally.
Nobody believes in an insecure border. Okay, if you poll the vast majority of Americans, nobody's like, we should have no border, unless you're like, I don't know, extremely fringe anarchist. The question is, how should you treat people who maybe 20, 30 years ago violated the law, crossed the border undocumented, and now has kids here? Or what do you do with people who are trying to file as refugees? Do you bring them into the United States, let them stay within the United States for their own safety? after they filed their paperwork and as they're waiting for the paperwork to process? Should they have to file from outside of the United States? These are the topics that are actually being debated, or the topics that should be being debated. The debate isn't should we have a secure border or not. That's not the debate.
That, right? Or there are people that want open borders. You believe in defund
the vast, dude, like very few, I don't know, maybe like 5% of the people, 5% of the country believes actually, you know, I don't know.
Dismantle no bail laws like cities like in New York, where the show originates from, or you believe law and order, safety, security is a prerequisite for the pursuit of happiness. You want energy independence, or you don't want any domestic energy production. I mean, how do you reconcile?
Well,
see, listen to that. By the way, listen to that. You either want energy independence, or you don't want any domestic energy production. What? What Democrat is like, we need no energy production? We should literally all triple our energy price, quadruple our energy price, no energy production. Who said this? Like, sorry, man, I don't like this stuff. There's a reason I don't like Fox.
See, I don't see those binaries at all. Quite the contrary.
You don't see it at all?
No, I don't. I mean, I want border security. Democrats want border.
Oh, look how miffed he is. Look at this.
At all. Quite the
you don't see it at all?
No, I don't. I mean,
you don't think most Democrats want to destroy all energy production and completely open the borders? What? Come on, get out of here.
I want border security. Democrats want border security. We also want comprehensive.
But you don't want any walls.
I want comprehensive immigration reform. I want to actually address the issue more comprehensively, just like Ronald Reagan did in 1989. Just like, and with respect, Sean, you promoted yourself with the Gang of Eight and bipartisan.
I think he's talking about the 1989. I believe that was when Ronald Reagan gave a lot of undocumented immigrants amnesty, if I remember correctly.
Legislation that got 68 votes in the Senate, only to die in the House, that could fundamentally address this issue, which is the issue. So I don't see those.
But I always had as my position, build the wall first. You're against building any wall.
I know. I have no problem with the 650 plus miles we have on border walls. I come from a state with the largest, I mean, San Ysidro is the largest land port in the Western Hemisphere. I don't need to be educated on the issue of the border or issues of immigration policy.
Well, one thing, Medi-Cal for illegals is $2.7 billion to the state.
And how many billions are we spending for uncompensated care? People end up in the emergency.
Can I ask you?
On the back end, wasting taxpayer money.
Why is it wrong to just demand, if you want to come to this country, obey our laws, respect our borders, respect our sovereignty, apply, come in, and we can expedite the application process.
It's the latter part. Now you're having a conversation. This is where I think the vast majority of Americans.
That's why I'm here.
Well, that's the point.
I'm here to bring us together.
And that was the point of the comprehensive reform. Where's Congress? I mean, look, you can criticize Biden all the time. Biden's border crisis, I watch 24/7, surround sound, anger machine around that. I get it.
Wait a minute. In 3 years,
I get it.
He will allow over 7.5 million people illegally into this country. Right. You have to see there's something wrong with that.
No, I do. And I see there's something right with what he's done post Title 42, a 70% reduction, taking a lot of the core tenets that the previous administration used. He's now being sued by the left, not just being applauded, certainly by the right. That said, here's what's missing.
It is true. The Biden administration has kept a lot of the Trump era policies on the border in place in order to try to combat the new wave of undocumented immigration, the new wave of migration. Even though much of it was also condemned by Democrats and a lot of Biden supporters and people who I think are currently even in the Biden administration.
Conversation you just suggested we should be having around dealing with asylum seekers and backlogs and updating and modernizing our visas and addressing a pathway that Ronald Reagan himself acknowledged.
Let me ask you,
hire more immigration judges. Hire more immigration judges.
Should, in the middle of a pandemic, health checks?
We did.
Should we have means testing so the people that enter this country are not going to be a financial burden on the American people?
We prioritize already with certain. We prioritize with STEM. We prioritize with visas. Already, we prioritize.
You're going to give a free college education and $2.7 billion of taxpayer dollars in California to Medi-Cal. And that's for illegal immigrants only.
No, and we're spending the money already. I know everybody on the right can't stand sanctuary policy. I understand that. Rudy Giuliani, by the way, Trump's old attorney, was a huge proponent of sanctuary policy.
I didn't know that.
Actually said it keeps you healthier, safer, and more educated. Actually made those arguments when he was governor, or rather mayor of New York. It's the cards that are dealt in the absence of comprehensive reform. I'm all for comprehensive reform. I'm for background checks. I'm for addressing border security in all its forms and manifestations, not just walls.
By the way, I just do want to say, he is interrupting him. He's not, but this is less interruption than Sean Hannity usually does, right? So, I mean, at least give him credit for that.
I'm addressing a legal pathway. I'm actually wanting to address all these issues, but I want to do it in a rational way and not just bastardize the conversation as exclusively about the border.
Okay, I have here in my pile of stuff the exact federal law that prohibits. Now, there are two court decisions that you might be able to cite. One is the Trump lawsuit. That was in the 90s.
I hope, and please, I want you guys to watch this with this in mind. I hope, because this is how I look at Gavin Newsom. I see Gavin Newsom as like one of the slickest, best candidates the Democrat has for any office, and possibly the presidency. He's somebody I think will probably run for president one day, and there's a really good chance that he gets a nomination. And I'm not saying he's the best candidate because he has the best policies. I'm just saying he's great with rhetoric. He's a great campaigner. There's a reason why he curb stomped the recall election when Larry Elder was challenging him so decisively. It wasn't even close, despite what some polling data said going into it. He's a good candidate when it comes to campaigning. He's good with rhetoric. He's good in debates. He's good in hostile interviews. And he knows how to make his case. And he's really good at making his case. And he's much better at trumpeting the accomplishments of the Biden administration than most of the Biden administration is. And I'm not even, and again, policy-wise, much too milquetoast for my personal liking, whether it be on labor or housing or any number of other issues. But I'm just saying, as a politician, I think he's one of the best in the country.
Ninth Circuit. The other is some wording and one opinion that Justice Scalia gave some years back. But it is unambiguous when you read the 18 U.S. Code as it relates to entering the country that you've got to do so legally. By characterizing the state as sanctuary, aren't you thereby violating federal law, the laws that are on the books, and that our own Constitution states very unequivocally that, in fact, you should be following?
Is it just me, or does Gavin Newsom give you a little bit like American Psycho vibes? Does it? Just a tiny bit. It's just a... Like if he aged up 20 years and got into politics. He does, just ever so slightly, he gives me those American Psycho vibes. Look at those eyes. Look at those cold eyes. Look at those cold eyes. He's thinking about scalping Sean Hannity live on screen, on TV.
Constitution states very unequivocally that, in fact, you should be following?
These sanctuary policies have been on the books for decades. Cities, Democratic cities, Republican-led cities in the past, Democratic states, clearly, more modern conception around dealing with reality, the cards that are dealt. Right. You want people that are victims of crime to come forward and report those crimes. That's the purpose of sanctuary. You want a kid be educated that's here regardless of how they got here. You want that kid educated. You want to take care of someone that's in an emergency and not have them concerned that they're going to be deported by a nurse. The point is you deal with reality. But look, I stipulate.
What he's talking about is that if somebody gets hurt and needs to go to a hospital, he doesn't want that to be in their mind that if they go to this hospital and get medical treatment as an undocumented immigrant and they find out that they're undocumented, that's going to lead to them getting deported, which could lead to them not getting medical treatment, which could then lead to them dying. And of course, he's talking about education. If an undocumented child cannot get a good education, it's probably going to just lead to generational poverty. It's going to lead to, you know, worse life outcomes, lower standard of living, and less economic production if that kid ends up staying and living in the United States.
I'm happy to get rid of those protections by doing the hard work of actually coming together as a nation across our differences and support comprehensive reform and modernize our asylum system and modernize our immigration system. This issue will only get worse. It's not just a border issue, is the point.
7.5 million people under Joe Biden will illegally enter this country in 3 years of his presidency. Yep. To me, that's unconscionable. That's unfair to the American people. That's unfair to the states, including your state. That's unfair to border states like Texas. But here's where I want to just pause a second and ask you a really serious question. I don't think Joe Biden is mentally, physically capable of being the president of the United States. Hang on. I suspect if I took your phone and I took a look at it, not that I believe in privacy, I would never do that. I would bet on a daily basis that there are people urging you to run for president and primary him. Am I wrong in my assumption?
Well, my phone's been lighting up how well he did with the UK Prime Minister. My phone lit up and how he
that's a nice duck.
McCarthy on the debt ceiling.
Does your phone light up?
My phone lights up with Republican friends saying, you know what? Despite all of the rhetoric, these bipartisan bills he keeps passing on infrastructure and the CHIPS and Science Act, the bipartisan work he did on gun legislation reform, and on
See what I mean? See what I mean about the messaging? See what I mean by touting Biden's victories? By making sure that he, like, because there's not going to be a question where Hannity's like, so what's the best things Biden did? So he has to find a way to get it in there. And this is the opportunity. I'm telling you, man, dude, Gavin Newsom, even though his skills are, I think, better than that, Gavin Newsom would be a fantastic press secretary.
Around the debt ceiling, make me feel maybe he's done a little bit better job than some.
But that wasn't my question. Does your phone light up with, Gavin, you need to get in this primary? He's not able to run. He's not up to the job.
Look, everybody has their quiet chatter, and everybody's out there rooting for America. I'm rooting for our president, and I have great confidence in his leadership.
I don't want him to fail.
Been able to accomplish.
I think his policies are failing.
CHIPS Act, Science Act, do you oppose that?
I will tell you, on every measure, from the economy and...
Ooh, first it was Gavin not answering, and now it's Sean not answering. The turns have tabled.
Inflation, borders, energy, national security, he's missing in action.
Let's talk about them in order.
Hang on.
Wait, but I want to challenge the premise. You said the economy, 13.1 million jobs he's created. More.
These are post-COVID jobs. Okay. You know that. I mean, that's an artificial number.
No. Then let me see.
That's not an artificial number just because it's post-COVID numbers.
Like this as an opportunity to engage civilly on this.
Okay.
Fair point. Your president, Donald Trump, lost 2.6 million jobs during his 4 years. We've created 13.1 million. Fine, you can maintain a COVID frame. How about the fact that Joe Biden's created more jobs, 6 times more jobs, than the previous 3 Republican presidents combined?
Are you going to tell me that the average family, where we have 2/3 of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck,
it was 70% under Trump? That was 70%. It was 70% under Donald Trump.
Pre-COVID, we had the lowest unemployment rate.
I remember there was a gigantic scandal about, I think it was Donna Brazile leaking to Hillary Clinton the questions before her debate with Bernie. And it was a gigantic example of the favoritism that DNC officials and Democratic Party officials gave Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders during the nomination process. That's not to say that it was rigged and like they changed the votes, but they gave her favoritism. This feels like how Hillary Clinton should have performed in that debate, knowing that she got the answers in advance. The way that he has something for everything that Sean puts out here, he has a response ready, locked, and loaded. Just how smooth he is, it makes me think that someone must have given him the questions beforehand. Sean Hannity most certainly wouldn't do that. Sean Hannity has no reason to flatter Gavin Newsom, but I'm just impressed. That's all. I'm just impressed that he had that on hand.
Americans now living paycheck to paycheck.
It was 70% under Trump. That was 70%. It was 70% under Donald Trump.
Pre-COVID, we had the lowest unemployment rate for every demographic.
Wait a second. Okay, so Gavin Newsom is making the case of all these jobs Joe Biden has created, 6 times more than the last 3 Republican administrations combined. And Sean Hannity's like, well, that's COVID numbers. And he's like, okay, well, putting aside the COVID numbers, though, Mr. Gavin Newsom, smooth talker, this administration under Biden, 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Under Trump, it was 70%. That's not true. Low unemployment. You can have low unemployment and still be living paycheck to paycheck. Sean Hannity's fumbling. He's stumbling. He's mumbling. What's going on over there?
We have the lowest black unemployment in history, and you and I are living with the lowest unemployment in our lifetime, Sean.
We had it for every demographic, and the economy was
black unemployment's record low under Joe Biden.
Okay, We had historic low after historic low under Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. I mean,
here's
he's
don't want to have
Trump's clock.
If Gavin really wanted to do it, if Sean's going to say, well, no, these records under Biden are actually due to Trump because they started happening on the Trump administration, you can go further back and say, well, it was Obama who recovered the economy after the 2008 Bush crash. Your president, by the way, Mr. Hannity, you voted for him, you supported him, not only privately, but on TV. It was Obama that had to take that economy out of the gutter and start an economic recovery. It was Democratic policies that gave Donald Trump the economy he had during the first, second, and third year of his administration before COVID started to kick in. He could make that argument, and I would make that argument. It's not entirely due to Obama, but it was in large part due to Obama. You just check can we check a GDP growth graph, USA. I think this is, how about economic growth graph? Yeah, I think you could say that. I think you could say that there needed to be some work done to start the recovery process, huh? Anyway, let's continue.
Low under Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. I mean, but he's
what I don't want to have
Trump's
happen.
clock, Biden, in terms of the progress in job creation. Look at what he's done on job.
Also, good point from Site Chat. Who was it that brought it up? It was Bammy. Unemployment under Biden is lower than it was under Trump.
How would you grade Joe Biden's presidency? Because you're at odds with the American people and the Democratic Party.
I'm just dealing with the facts. I'm dealing with the facts.
What is your grade for
I'm going to go back. Let's talk. You brought up 6 topics.
You got to answer some questions.
I'm answering the ones in order. You brought up the economy. On the economy, let's talk about the economy.
You want to give him an A?
Inflation, stubborn around the globe. Let's talk about inflation. It's down 40% since last summer, 10 months in a row, 4.9%. He was just with the UK Prime Minister at 6.9%. Is that because of Biden's
I think
Fed
Biden's
policy?
Economic and energy policies
Directly impacted the UK's inflation?
No, I am
Or the fact that France is 5.5% or Germany's at 6.1%? On inflation, we're moving in the right direction. On the issue of the border security,
he inherited 1.4% inflation. It went up to a 40-year high. Globally, because you just brought up, you were making an excuse for Trump's dismal jobs record related to COVID. It wasn't a dismal jobs record. You won't acknowledge COVID's relationship to inflation globally. And by the way, COVID and immigration impacting our inflation. Let me stop you. All right, so I would assume you're going to give Biden an A. Here's the problem that Joe Biden has. You're arguing, you're fighting, you're battling, you're articulate. We could sit here for 3 hours, probably have a beer or two in the middle of this, and you can keep going. Here's the problem. Your president can't have this conversation. He's not capable of it. Now my question is a serious one.
All right.
Okay, is Joe Biden up to the job of being president? And as a little reminder, take a look at your president in the monitor.
And there's an awful lot of stories that are told, probably a bunch apocryphal about the former prime minister liking to take baths up that. Anyway.
Wandering around at 3 in the morning. Yeah, Winston Churchill.
By the way, I met with who are those guys that fly over shortly? You heard of them, haven't you? And the cheer.
Is that it? I'm sorry. This is the weakest Saw stuff, man. It's like slight, like oh, he fumbles on his words for like 4 seconds, and like he's like, what's that thing again? Like, really? This is it? Come on. Like, I even know there's worse stuff on Biden out there. I've seen worse stuff. Like, show him falling down the stairs again, man. There's something like that. I don't know.
We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I know him, and I did mispronounce his name. So I'm trying to think. Where was the last?
I mean, I'm sorry. This is like weak stuff, man. He mispronounces a foreign name because no American president's done that before.
Last place I was, it's hard to keep track. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Can we actually bring up the compilation of Donald Trump mispronouncing foreign names? I feel like there might be a few examples.
Ireland. That's where it was.
It's just so weak. It's like, I can believe that because of Biden's age, his like ability to like be a great public speaker has greatly decreased, right? Obviously. But everything they're showing right now not only is weak sauce, but none of it proves that he can't be president of the United States. The only thing you could maybe make the argument of is, oh, Biden isn't the best public speaking figurehead of the nation.
EIGH%. He said, you're too much like that guy who led the revolution instead of the guy who was the prime minister. He said, you got to be less like the military guy. They shot him.
God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done.
And then you got Joe Biden who's having a hard time standing up. Take a look at that one.
There it is, falling down. They have to show him falling down.
I want you to tell me that you think he is cognitively strong enough to lead this country against China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and a new axis of evil.
Putin didn't fall down the stairs. Where's the footage of Putin falling down the stairs? America's fallen.
That he's the guy, he cannot articulate the
Let's go lick the world. That is best.
economy the way you just did.
Yeah, but I don't think he's capable. I know he's capable. I see results. I've seen a masterclass in results the last few years. You don't see the results on the CHIPS Act. You don't see the results on the infrastructure. You had Infrastructure Week every week for 4
CHIPS Act,
years.
we're still importing them all from Taiwan, which is about to be taken over by China.
Wait, did Sean Hannity expect that you would sign the CHIPS Act and within a year we would have manufacturing that's built up enough production to completely make Taiwan's production? Like, we could go without it? No, that's not. You can't get factories up that quickly. He's made the investment. That's what matters.
Alec Kyle Parker
he's built the groundwork.
$10. One could argue that it's more American to mispronounce foreign names. Also remember when Trump didn't remember the word origins.
That is true. But I mumble and fumble on my words all the time. Maybe that's part of the reason I'm so defensive.
$4 billion proof point just here in California with Applied Materials, bringing semiconductor investment back here in the state of California. My point being,
we're going to talk about
real results, but bipartisan results, real results, jobs programs. The IRA, I know you don't like it. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars in green energy investment, mostly in red states. You're the biggest beneficiary of the IRA.
He raised taxes on oil, gas, coal, pensions, and, quote, taxes corporations. Corporations don't pay taxes. They pass the cost on to consumers.
Wait, did somebody just, oh yeah, somebody just, what's this?
Because 4 or 5 years ago, this place was a disaster. In 2017, Whirlpool won relief from the ITC once again. Once more, your foreign competitors moved their factories to prevent a level playing field and to avoid liability, shifting production to Thailand.
Thailand! Okay, what's the other one? Puerto Rico?
We are also praying for the people of Puerto Rico.
Puerto? Okay, sorry.
That's all they do. You know that.
On the issue of energy independence, I think it was your second of the
somebody in chat just gives it tier 1 for the 5th month. It was Cartophian. What a name. Thank you so much for the tier 1. Dude is doing well for his age. Biden or Trump or Gavin? There's a lot of old people.
List of items.
Do you think he's cognitively strong enough to be president?
I have conversations with him all the time, yes. And I'll tell you what.
You do?
I'm dead serious about that. I've talked to him when he's been overseas. I've been in Air Force One, Marine One. I've been in the limo with him. I've spent time with him privately.
But you never answered my question directly. How many times does your phone ping a day, people saying you need to get in this race because they agree with me that he's not up to the job?
I see where you're going with that.
I'm asking.
No, and I'm not answering.
Under any circumstances would you get in this primary?
No.
None.
I really am proud. I think he's a man of decency and character. I'm really proud of the president. I'm proud of what he's accomplished.
Is he strong enough to be president? That's
strong enough. Look what he just did to McCarthy. He ran circles. Look at the vote card.
I didn't like the vote. I wouldn't have voted for it.
Exactly. Kevin got played by the President of the United States. I'm for results. I don't think
the American people benefit. I like the plan that would have saved $4.8 trillion. All right. Now, so we're at a point, I think you are far more articulate, far more versed, far more energetic. I have this theory that people are going to come calling because I don't think in your party they think he's the guy. No. Just my thought. Now I've got a bunch of... Well, look, I don't want to make this an argument. I want you to explain. Because my argument to you is conservative policies work. Okay. You know, I don't care if it's Ronald Reagan. I don't care if it's Newt Gingrich's contract. I don't care if it's Donald Trump's 4 years as president. Got it. I believe his policies work. Peace through strength work, building up our military, building a wall, enforcing law and order, energy independence, which Biden gave up, which he didn't bring up.
Which I'm happy to directly.
Let me show you a list of corporate headquarters that are leaving your state in well,
no, let's bring it on. I look forward to having this conversation.
There you go.
I'm well aware.
Corporate headquarters, they're leaving. Look at San Francisco in particular. They're closing down because they can't keep their product in the store because they're getting robbed. I got another one for you. Okay. Seasonally adjusted business applications. You always bring up Florida. Yeah. I compared you to Florida. I think you have a higher population, if I'm not mistaken.
A significantly higher population.
Why are they doing better in business formulation?
Well, we'll have to take a look at that in more detail.
Take a look.
I'm happy that we're looking forward. How many more of these you have? Let's go.
About 8.
Bring them on.
Bring them all on?
Bring them all on. Let's have this conversation.
Okay. Let me ask. This is a tough question for you.
I don't think it will be. Well, let's find out.
All right.
Sorry, that got me.
Right. So you're the first governor in history that has had a net migration out of the Gulf.
Wait, okay, I'm sorry.
Burns is a...
He was like dropping all this data and like all these things that he hasn't been able to respond to. Wait. If you're going to ask something like, if you're going to be like, well, look at this data, give them a chance to respond to the data. Don't move on to another question. I feel like number one, Sean Hannity said he wouldn't interrupt him. He does interrupt him. That's the first thing. Second thing, it feels like he's trying to make up for the slight reduction in average Sean Hannity interruptions by just front loading with so much information that he can't respond to it in time. But if you give him enough time to respond to it, like Gavin curb stomps him. So I think that might be part of the motivating factor as to why he's not doing that. Or he's not giving him too much time to respond to all of it. Anna Markey, thank you so much for the gifted tier 1 sub to Felix Falls. The new NAFO pod, actually, it's the Wagner NAFO podcast. It's been released on his channel. It's already been released on mine. We can also go check it out on his channel as well, Anna Markey on YouTube.
Golden State. Go west, young man.
Yep.
I lived here by the way, I lived here 5 years.
Horace Greeley.
I was the poorest guy in Santa Barbara at the time in the early 80s. If you look at, I want you to really look at this and explain for the years 2021 and 2022 why Florida is taking in nearly 1,000 people a day and you're losing 800 people a day. Right. They're leaving. Tell me why they're leaving your state.
So we'll stop at 3, or you want to do the whole?
No. We'll just answer one at a time.
18 states had declines in population. California's was 0.3%. You didn't bring up any of the red states that had decline in populations. It's an interesting fact, and I don't see it on here. An interesting omitted fact.
What's that?
Per capita, more Floridians moved to California than Californians moving to Florida. That, I don't imagine, is in one of your 8 slides. Let me take another stab at this. In 2021, California had 7.8% of GDP growth in this country, one of the fastest growing economies anywhere on planet Earth. This state continues to be the tentpole of the American economy. 25.6% of all American jobs came from this state in April. In the last 2 fiscal years, we enjoyed $177.7 billion in operating surpluses. We're on our way to be the 4th largest economy, eat your heart out, Germany, in the world. Number 1 in R&D, venture capital, more scientists, researchers, more Nobel laureates, more patents emanating out of this state than any other state in America. With all due respect, Florida doesn't even come close. Eat your heart out, Texas. California continues to be the dominant economic engine for the American public.
I promised you before this interview I would let you give full answers. That's a full answer.
Thank you.
Okay.
The first
now I want to challenge it.
Good.
And the challenge is this is the first time in the history of the state that you've lost population.
Yes.
The first time.
Correct.
Now, I'm going to give you another sheet here. And this is about income tax.
He's got so
Your
many.
state income tax is 13.3% at the highest number. I also did more digging. The top 1% of Californians pay 50% of that total income tax bill.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That's redistribution.
Oh, my God. That's so... Oh, my God. Woo! Woo! Sorry. Got a little excited hearing that. 50%, that's beautiful. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, let's continue. Oh no, the rich are paying their fair share. Not even yet, but closer than what they pay in a lot of other states to a fair share.
Distribution of wealth, isn't it?
Well, it's progressive tax policy.
Wait, it looks like that progressive tax policy is leading to the most productive American economy, the most productive and largest economy in the entire country. That's something to take note of, isn't it? That progressive tax policy, huh?
Now, look at yours, 13.3. What is Florida? What does that say?
By the way, I don't want to give the Californian tax policy too much credit because, again, it doesn't go far enough, but still. In comparison to, like, Florida, it's still a mile and a half better.
It says 0.
Well, it's factually untrue. It's not 0. They
have 0 state income tax.
Well, the top 1% pay. Look, here you're promoting. Sean,
is that a lie?
No. Here's what you're promoting. You're promoting regressive tax policy. We don't believe in regressive tax policy. You're promoting one component of entire tax system, the 1%. With all due respect, you and I may pay the 1%. The vast majority of people watching don't. You pay more taxes in states like Texas for the middle class than you do in states like California.
Right now,
hold on, no, this is important.
We have too many
comparisons. The American people don't know this.
Sean, you said you would give him full answers, Sean. Sean, come on, you opened up the segment with full answers. You said full answers, Sean. Give him the time. Get off of him. Let him finish.
We have the highest tax rate for the 1%, but middle-class families actually pay less than the majority of states in America, in California. The question is, who are you for? So who are you fighting for?
I am for. I'm just wondering, because I have homes in Florida.
Yeah.
And
you pay a lot of property tax there. Double what you pay in California. I would think twice about that.
Except if you add the millionaire property tax that you've just put in L.A. County.
Well, that's a transfer.
Oh, yeah, on millionaires compared to the... Okay, I'm deeply concerned about that.
For tax, and we didn't do that. That was done locally.
Transfer tax is like $500,000.
I don't know if you can even get health insurance down.
So you're telling me the loss of net population...
18 states, we were number 10.3%.
And this number here, 13.3%. Now, every Californian also...
We've had for a decade.
Okay.
For a decade.
But right, and you supported it for a decade.
The public actually initiated it. It was supported by the public.
But the point is, Florida has 0. The net population growth, for Florida is almost
1%.
Is almost 1,000 new people.
Dude, you know why I keep saying hang on? Because he sees Gavin Newsom like a crouching tiger getting ready to pounce every time Sean says anything.
A day, and you're losing 800 people a day.
Wait,
here's my question. Is this connected to that?
No, I respect your audience too much to let them be misled on this. Your audience doesn't live in that rarefied. No.
This is a lie?
You're manipulating some fundamental facts. You're omitting the fact that the vast majority of people do not live in the 1%. You're talking about the 1% tax.
1% pays half of it.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm talking about the American people don't live.
Yeah, but if the 1% pay half, then wouldn't that mean that if you were to say cut taxes on the 1%, you could lose a very significant part of California's tax base? Which they invest into their infrastructure, which they invest into healthcare, which they invest into education, which they invest into a whole host emergency services, policing. Okay, whatever.
Live there. And the reality is when they live in Texas versus California, middle class pay more than they do in the state of California.
Texas is higher tax than Florida, that's for sure. Yeah, but your beef seems to be with Ron DeSantis.
No, man, we could talk about Abbott for
the kidnapper. We'll get into that in a little bit.
But here's my point. Yeah. We've had a progressive tax, but I didn't establish the 13.3%. That was done before I even got here. I've opposed new increases in the top 1% tax. I opposed a statewide wealth tax. I've never been a prophet.
See what I mean? Little milquetoast.
Get Democrat. I balance budgets. We make the hard choices. I'm a business guy.
You have a deficit of $32 billion this year.
This state, we dominate in venture capital, innovation. We have the finest system of public higher education anywhere on planet Earth. We convey more talent than any place on the planet. This state, R&D, what did Tesla just do? They moved back into the state of California. Disney's moving their jobs back from Florida in the state of California. You didn't acknowledge per capita more Floridians coming back to California than Californians going to Florida. This was anomalous. 18 states saw a decline. I love this state. Don't count us out. I've been hearing this bashing all my life.
I am not, but I have a list of all the state headquarters, and I'll scroll them on our screen. Good. And you could take a look at them. These are all the corporations that have left your state.
And we're creating.
Wait, the first one is Tesla, which you just said is coming back. Ah, dude. Sean was so unprepared for this interview, man. And he had graphs and figures and documents to hand Newsom, and he can control the screen, and he has clips of Biden and Newsom, and it was like water off of a duck's back, man. Man, I wonder if anybody else at Fox could have done this job better than Hannity could have.
Corporate head.
Like if Tucker was still with him, I wonder if he could have done it any better. I think honestly, he probably would have just been more dishonest in how he engaged, which I guess maybe more an aggressive response, but it probably would have looked worse.
Quarters, one after another. There's a lot. So what I'm pointing out is,
how many jobs are we creating? How many unicorn companies? How many IPOs? 3 times Florida, twice the number of Texas. Don't omit all of the facts.
Okay, I'm asking you not to admit all the facts. So we have all these corporations. Let me give you a list here. Here's the whole list: Tesla, Apple, Nestle,
Tesla
Oracle.
just moved their world headquarters for R&D back
their
here.
business headquarters.
He's actively telling. What do you mean, Tesla? Just move this back, and he just keeps going. He just keeps going
out of your state.
Yeah, and how many jobs they created in
the whole list I gave you.
And how many jobs left with them? How many jobs?
Like to keep it?
No, but you need to know. None. It was insignificant, inconsequential. We create more companies every single day, more billionaires.
I'm scrolling these companies.
No, 1/2 of America's $1 billion valued companies are in the state of California. This state economy has outperformed the nation, 3.1% in the last decade, 2.1% nationwide. I've been hearing this nonsense for half a century, literally half a century.
But they've only left in recent years.
How many have we created? How many new IPOs? How many new opportunities? How many jobs were taken out of the state of California when Tesla moved its headquarters? You don't know that because it was insignificant.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Oof. Is there more here? Is there more? There has to be more. He said it was an hour long, right? 1 second. Sean Hannity, Gavin Newsom. That was only 25 minutes. I wonder if I can get more. I wonder if there's more online publicly available. Because we had that one. Then there's this other one. And then that's it. Come on. Do we have like the... Oh, I want to watch the rest of it. Full interview. Instead of just the 27 minutes there. But God, that was good. That was good. So, yes! Yes! Okay, dope. Dope.
Anywhere on planet Earth, we convey more talent than any place on Florida. So
okay, if we do, we got the whole thing. Hell yeah. Yes.
Economy is... How many jobs don't...
Discuss the out-of-control homelessness consuming his state and the lengthy lists of businesses leaving the state of California. Stay with us.
Oh. How long is it like that? Okay.
Welcome back to Hannity. So with a declining population, it is no secret that Americans are now fleeing California in droves, despite it.
It's like he didn't listen to anything Gavin said. Like, just like I said, everything from Sean Hannity is like water off of a duck's back. It's more like, I guess for Hannity, it's more like diarrhea. It's just like, it stinks. Everyone can see it. It's disgusting, but he just keeps going. There's like no acknowledgement.
Its vast natural resources, great weather, beautiful coastline. Now, California is shrinking rapidly, but it's not
rapidly, 0.3%.
Just people, businesses also are leaving the state. Look at this. According to one CBS report, approximately 65,000 have left since 1990. And that exodus continues to this day and is especially palpable in San Francisco. The city's famed Union Square neighborhood is now quickly turning into a ghost town with...
It feels like Gavin Newsom's responses were so solid that he has to stuff every second of airtime when Gavin isn't on screen with talking points. So not only does he get to push his talking points during the interview, but he has to push them after the, just push as many, just get as many in there.
19 major store closures since...
Not saying there's anything wrong with getting all your information out there. I'm just saying that's what it feels like.
2020. So what's going on in the Golden State, and will the state's governor take any responsibility? Here's part 2 of my interview with Governor Gavin Newsom.
Take any responsibility.
Let me ask about quality of life issues. When you have...
I'll give you these back, by the way. I'm well aware of these stats.
I think if you put them around the governor's mansion, this is going to be a classic interview. You know, listen, it may seem, and you're very, I appreciate your passion for your state.
I love it.
I appreciate the fact that you fight for the things you believe in.
Yeah.
You know, and this goes back to the original premise of not only this discussion, because this really is a friendly discussion.
No, I know.
There's no personal animus.
Is it? I don't know, but
between us.
I mean, they're not literally calling each other like pedophiles, which is better for like a Trump debate with one of his contemporaries.
It's just, I don't agree with your views. You're very good at giving reason, rationale for losing population and higher state income tax. And now I'm going to ask you about the homeless population. But you have stores now in San Francisco because of smash and grab robberies. They're leaving.
Yeah.
You know, Walgreens is one. I think Target is the other. There's at least 3. Whole Foods is another. Yeah. You're leaving San Francisco. Yeah. Okay. So my question to you is, between taxes, bureaucracy, crime, homelessness, and the homeless numbers are not really good for you in your state versus Florida.
I acknowledge that. And no, I mean, I wouldn't compare ourselves to anyone. It's a disgrace, the homeless issue out
in
here.
2008, you had a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
I got the tape. Let me play for you.
Let's do it. San Francisco.
We believe, fundamentally, that food solves hunger, that shelters solve sleep, and that housing solves homelessness. And if we're going to solve the problem of those that are out on the streets that we define as homeless, we better solve the housing problem if we're going to have an impact. And that's why we established this framework, what we call a 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness in San Francisco.
Okay, now, here we are.
You want to know the results after 10 years?
Okay, here's the comparison.
No, I don't need to look at
You don't like my charts. I know you wouldn't like
I know the charts. I know these charts so well. Yeah. After 10 years, we reduced the street population by 33%. You know what? I'm proud of the fact we established the goal. We did it with the Bush administration, with Republicans. We did it with a framework where we were actually identified by George W. Bush as one of the leaders in terms of establishing not only a framework of a plan, but delivering on what we promoted and promised. And I agree with you. You know, Michelangelo said it best. The biggest risk in life is not that we aim too low and reach it, it's we aim too high and miss it, rather the opposite. My point being, we have to be audacious. And in so doing, we actually made progress. This state has not made progress in the last 2 decades as it relates to homelessness.
Why?
Because housing costs are too high, our regulatory thickets are too problematic, localism has been too impactful, meaning people locally are pushing back against new housing starts and construction. I've been here 4 years. I can't make up for the fact in 2005 we had an historic number of homeless under Republican administration.
Right now there's 171,000 estimated. Okay.
Disgraceful.
And all right, I'll compare to Florida again. 26,000.
Of course.
Okay, same weather, similar state. I mean, I've lived in...
Wait, what the... Didn't you... Florida... How... Okay. 1 second. Let me look at the population difference of Florida, okay? Population Florida. What are they, like 4 million? 21 million. Okay. 39. Okay, so it's double the size. Okay, so California still would have a disproportionately higher amount of homeless than Florida. Gotcha.
Both dynamics are very different. That said, we own this, Sean. I'm not here defending this.
Okay.
But here's the difference.
But you're going to build 1,200 homes this year, I read.
That's not true.
You have a proposal.
I just got 68,000 people off the streets last year. And by the way, that's been PolitiFact, 68,000. I have a $15.3 billion homeless plan. When I got here, it was $500 million. The state of California was not involved in the homeless issue. We got involved. We're holding cities and counties accountable. I'm suing cities that are not producing housing. We actually have a 15-year high in new housing starts in the state of California. We're actually seeing programs produce real results, but I want accountability. I'm not the mayor of California. I'm governor of states larger than 21 states, populations combined. And the difference between me and most politicians is I own this. I take responsibility for this. This is personal to me. I love this state. I don't like what's happening with the encampments. I don't like what's happening in the streets and sidewalks. I don't like the bashing of my old city, San Francisco. Whole Foods did shut down one business, but there was a bad location to begin with. They're opening a new one. We have 2.7%.
My sister was out here recently with her team, and I said, don't go to the wharf.
Certain parts are bad. And we own that. I just put the National Guard and the CHP down there. Hundreds of millions. I know. And by the way, you mentioned defund police. Don't accuse me of that. I've never been part of that.
You did say, and I have a quote of you saying you didn't want to build any more border wall. That quote I have.
Because it was sort of...
Wait, what? Okay, I'm sorry. Is that... I don't want to defund the police. Well, you said that the border wall... What does the border wall have to do with... I'm sorry, man. This is just frustrating.
Farcical, this notion that somehow you're going to have a physical structure that's 2,000 miles long.
Why not?
With all due respect, I sit here watching the former president say he did it and somehow Mexico paid for it. It's laughable, those assertions.
Well, you got a better trade deal with Mexico and Canada, NAFTA.
What does a better trade deal on NAFTA have to do with the construction of a 2,000-mile border wall that Mexico was supposed to pay for that didn't happen? And he meant that literally when he talked about the border wall.
I'm not here to take a cheap shot on that point.
And coming up next, you are an open sanctuary.
Okay, where we go? Let's skip, and here we go.
California, which is a sanctuary state. Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he posted this tweet threatening Florida Governor Ron DeSantis with kidnapping charges. They did sign waivers. Now, this despite the fact that the Biden administration, they've been flying illegal immigrants all over the country, often landing in the dead of night. Wonder why. Also, repeated assertions from Florida officials that illegal immigrants all willingly made that trip. We did ask Governor Newsom about his feud with Governor DeSantis and whether he would agree to a debate one-on-one with me hosting. Here's what he had to say.
Many of the people that were sent to at least Martha's Vineyard, I know from the, I believe that was that from Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis? I forget which one was the Martha's Vineyard one. But those people were very confused as to what was going on, and they had like court dates on their asylum hearings on the other side of the country after being sent to Martha's Vineyard on the same day. Like they were set up for failure.
Here's my question. Maybe I have an idea that you'd agree with. I want to start a series of debates and get some of the best, brightest, leading conservative minds and some of the best, brightest left-wing minds or liberal minds. Yeah. And I'd put you in that category. And I want to call it like the great debates.
Love it.
And the first one I want...
Wow. He's stealing the hippy dippy, huh? Everybody's trying to get off that Dylan Burns clown, huh?
Want to do is with you and Governor DeSantis.
Great. I've offered it. I've been trying to debate him for 2 years.
Here's how this debate format will go.
Good.
I'll say Governor Newsom, Governor DeSantis, economy. That's the only word I'm going to throw out.
Love it.
You, minute, then you go at it, next topic.
Right.
And I'll moderate it that way, and you have my word, I'll moderate it that way.
I'm all in.
Just like one word? Economy? Isn't that a little broad? I don't know. Like it's a little abstract, I guess.
Count on it.
You would do a 2-hour debate with Ron DeSantis.
I make it 3.
3-hour debate with
make
do
it.
I hear 4?
And do it with 1 day notice with no notes. I look forward to that. We could talk about his zest for demonization. We could talk about his assault on free enterprise.
Call him a kidnapper?
I said question mark. Still being investigated.
The question mark was
still being investigated. Still being investigated.
And you may bring charges. The people you know.
What kind of faith tradition?
How nice was it?
Says you should treat people like.
Remember I won't interrupt him. You remember that?
So Ron DeSantis did the goodness of his heart. He's going around the country to try to help migrants and bring them to states because he knows a question about that.
Why is it that he sends a plane load of people to Martha's Vineyard, a liberal enclave, right?
Yes. For $1.5 million.
Okay.
$1.5 million. Who's the fiscal conservative?
Here's the best part. We went and we looked. There were more than double the amount of rooms available for every one of the people that landed there that day. Okay. And all of them.
They had court cases on the other side of the country in Washington State to go through their asylum hearing the same day they arrived. They sent them there knowing, or at least not caring, that they would fail.
Signed a waiver All of them. By the way,
come on. I read the waiver. They showed me the waiver. Okay. I couldn't even understand it, and I have some pretty decent education.
They got the sanctuary liberal enclave couldn't handle, 50 illegal immigrants.
You don't do this with
them out. Hey, what do you mean they couldn't handle? This is the thing that gets me about it. Is they were sent to Martha's Vineyard and then they accepted them with open arms. Like, that's the thing that really gets me about the Martha's Vineyard story. Is there something to be said about, like, oh, the liberal who, like, wants undocumented immigrants here, but they took them into their own house? But they did that. They did it. They took them in. That's what confuses me. That completely confuses me. But they still try to hit on the talking point as if they were sent to Martha's Vineyard and they were like, no, and they just, like, kicked them all out and they all slept on the streets, but that didn't happen.
They threw them out in less than 24 hours.
There were children.
Then why did they throw them out?
Why do that?
Why did Martha's Vineyard throw them out?
Why do you use people as pawns? I mean, what faith tradition teaches you to treat human beings like this, to belittle them, to demean them under false pretense?
You are an open sanctuary state. Why don't you embrace them?
I'm about dealing with the cards that are dealt. I'm for comprehensive immigration reform. I'm proud of our president for putting a strategy out, and you guys have been silent on it. You haven't even discussed it.
If you are a sanctuary state, why don't you embrace them and say thank you for sending them?
We embrace everybody here. We deal with the cards of date in a human way.
Florida's not a sanctuary state.
I don't like people being told under false pretense one thing. I don't think this happened. I know it. I sat down with these migrants. I talked to every single one of them. They were lied to. They were misled.
In what way?
This was a setup. They were told they had jobs. They told they were going to get certain court dates changed. They were dropped off. They knocked on the door and they left. And it was not coordinated. I mean, what kind of faith tradition?
He's right about it not being coordinated. He's right about the court dates.
There is a videotape of the people getting on the plane.
Because they were all lied to and told, you're being taken care of, everything's going to be great. I would be proud and happy.
Then because
By the way, I have the RFP.
Because they landed in your sanctuary state, you're going to take care of them. They should be happy.
Look, we'll deal with the car. I mean, come on, this is California.
I know it's California. Okay? I'm aware of where I am.
On this way, the fourth largest economy in the world. We can handle all of this, okay? I'm a border state. Ron DeSantis is not. I know he's desperate to get in on the action.
No, because a lot of people
belly flopped. Donald Trump is going to clean his clock.
Is it fair that Joe Biden...
DeSantis has belly flopped. He will clean his clock. He needs attention. And he set this up months ago by doing an RFP. I have the contractors
my question
that he tried to hire, saying he was going to send people to California. This is a stunt. It's embarrassing. It's pathetic.
I disagree. I think he did the right thing. His state's not a sanctuary state. Well, Joe Biden
just wanted to help people.
Will you apply the same standard to Joe Biden?
He's Christ, he's fucking dragging Sean Hannity around the room, man. He's dragging him around, man. He's like... took them to the back of his pickup truck and he's driving them through the countryside.
And all these illegal immigrants...
Coordinating them.
Wait, pickup truck, that's not true. His electric vehicle.
The same
He's from California, after all.
To Joe Biden. He's flying all these illegal immigrants...
Coordinating them. Excuse me. I'm engaged directly with the administration.
They're landing at 3:30 in the morning in Westchester Airport. Not LaGuardia, not Kennedy. Yeah. Westchester. You know why? Because they're sneaking them in when states aren't looking and counties aren't looking.
Not perfect, but they're coordinating. There's a different spirit. There's a different level of engagement. It's different in daylight and darkness. It's not perfect. There's some humility in this.
Well, isn't Joe Biden dumping people in Florida and all these other states?
He doesn't dump people anywhere.
Well,
what DeSantis
what's the difference between what Joe is doing and what DeSantis is
manipulation.
doing? And coming up next.
Saying that over and over.
Okay, come on. Let's get to the last part of this. The last part.
With the former president, take a look. Donald Trump, I'd be negligent if I didn't get your reaction to what happened in the news.
Sad, and I say that as an American. I can imagine.
Were you friendly with him?
Well, as you know, I didn't have a close fist. I had an open hand. We actually had an incredible relationship during COVID. It was incredible. He played no politics during COVID with California. Played none whatsoever. It's a fact. And by the way, I've got a lot of critique from the left by saying that over and over and over.
You probably shouldn't have gone to the French Laundry.
No, it was a dumb mistake. It was a terrible mistake. It wasn't illegal. It was wrong. And I totally violated the spirit of what I was preaching. And it was wrong. And I own that. I own that. And you know what? For the grace of God, no one else has ever made a mistake. I guess I did. I own that.
He's talking, it's like, you know, all those instances of like politicians like putting in COVID requirements and then violating COVID requirements. That's what he's referring to. That's what he's talking about. a dinner where he violated some COVID requirements during those, and during the, period of COVID when everybody was social distancing hardcore.
Okay, everybody makes mistakes. However, that was a dumb one.
But it was dumb.
It was,
and I own it. So I don't need to be reminded of it.
Close quarters, no mask, and I'm like, all right.
It was.
Hey, look, by the way,
right.
I think it was your birthday party, right?
It was a good friend's 50th birthday party. The restaurant was legally open. It was dumb.
You said on Dianne Feinstein, just to get one piece of news in, that you will, if you have to replace her, you have set a criteria, only an African-American woman. Why?
Because I thought it was the right thing to do. We lost, with the Kamala Harris, we lost that representation. It's important. It's historic. I appointed the first Latino in California's history, 37% of the state. Latino, 39% of the state.
I do think it's silly when a politician says, I will appoint somebody who is this ethnic group. I don't like that. I don't think that's a good thing to say. Now, if you were to look into it and be like, look, I think somebody's, we've had an issue with, the black community. We've had an issue with them feeling represented. I think this is a factor that we will consider when choosing our nominee, but I don't like if given the opportunity, I will choose the nominee and I will make them this race. I don't like that. I never liked it. You should look at you should never, I think, close the door on a bunch of other great nominees just because of their race.
I thought that was important.
Shouldn't the criteria just be the best person?
Well, there's plenty of. African American. It's a limitless
I'm saying
pool.
Best person and just not have a criteria. Last question.
I think representation. I think representation does matter. I do think it matters.
So the thing I got gets. Look at this. Sean Hannity asked him a question that makes his point, then tries to move on before Gavin can even respond. Look at this.
I think African American. It's a limitless
I'm saying
pool.
Best person and just not have a criteria. Last question.
I think representation. I think representation does matter. I do think it matters.
You got a recommendation of 1.2 million, I think, per
1.4.
1.4?
Yeah.
I stand corrected. And you want to see the full report? Can you afford that?
I mean,
are you really going to pay that money?
Ronald Reagan did reparations for the Japanese.
I'm asking for it.
It's beyond. It doesn't have to be in the frame of writing a check. Reparations comes in many different forms, but one cannot deny these historical facts. And I really believe very strongly we have to come to grips.
How do you justify people that had no connection generationally to anything to do with slavery? How do you...
Wait. What? What? No connection generationally. Well, they do have a connection generationally. You can see it in the wealth gap between white and black people. You could see it in where black people live and where white people live due to redlining and other types of policies which come from Jim Crow and what was instituted in the United States after slavery to try to protect the quote unquote like racial hierarchy. Talk about missing the point, Dylan. Missing what point? What point did I miss?
Just believe very strongly we have to come to grips.
How do you justify people that had no connection generationally to anything to do with slavery?
He means white people with no slavery in their ancestry. Let me listen to him again.
People that had no connection generationally to anything to do with slavery. How do you justify them having either a lower standard, a higher standard, or paying money for something that they or their family were not responsible?
I totally...
Okay, so he's saying the white people who didn't themselves enslave people. By the way, there are white people who have generational wealth from slavery and plantation. That is true. But there are people who also don't. It would depend on how the reparations are paid. If it's like a check or something, then obviously it's going to cause a lot more social problems. Is going to cause a lot more tension than if it was, say, infrastructure investments into historically underserved communities, educational investments into historically underserved communities, housing investments into. That's going to be very different. Definitely if these communities also are quite diverse, because if they were to do it based upon, and this is how I would always prefer it, if they were to do it based upon income level, if they were to find which areas are have the lowest amount of income, the lowest amount of productive economic power, they're going to find out a lot of these communities, well, I'm not going to find this out, we already know this, are black communities. A lot of it has to come with a lack of generational wealth. A lot of it has to come with the history of redlining and job, historical discrimination when it comes to job and the type of material wealth black people could attain. And if they were to invest in these communities, that would naturally, just through us seeing like what percentage black people make up of lower economic households, which they make up a disproportionate amount of, that would naturally help black people disproportionately because they make up a larger percentage of that economic base. So that's what I would always be interested in. That's what I think would make the most sense. But I don't know if we even need to call that reparations. I don't know. But you get my point.
Look,
you understand that?
Deeply understand that. Okay. And I deeply understand. Do the math on the 1.4. Okay, look, we want us to level set. You had a group the last 2 years that is making a series of recommendations. That was one of many recommendations. You guys ran with that over and over and over and over again.
Support it? Still today? You support the money?
I haven't even seen the recommendations.
When you see the recommendations, are you inclined to support the money?
I put out a statement saying reparations is more than just about money. That implies a deeper rationalization of what is achievable, what's reasonable, and what is right. And that's the balance that we'll try to advance.
And coming up, a sneak preview of the rest of my interview with Governor Gavin Newsom that will air later this week. Straight ahead.
What? There's more? How much of this interview? How? Jesus. Okay, I don't need to see the sneak preview. Gavin Newsom did incredibly well. I was really surprised by how well he did. I mean, I knew he would do relatively well because he's very good in these types of environments, but I was surprised by how overwhelmingly well he did. Where if you look into the comments of the Fox News original upload of, I think, the first 24 minutes of the interview, it is a bunch of Republicans acknowledging that Sean Hannity, while he tried to press him, he got pressed. He got put on the back foot. He didn't know how to deal with Gavin Newsom's responses, and some of them were so timely and so closely related. A lot of the information, a lot of the responses he had were so closely related to topics they were talking about, and just like the data he had on hand, it almost felt like he was almost like prepped on what would be asked in the interview. I don't think that happened. I'm just saying, like, that's how well he did. Of course, Gavin Newsom is not my favorite Democrat. He's too milk toast, in my opinion. He's too moderate for me, but you cannot discredit the fact that the dude knows how to tout the Biden administration's accomplishments. And this is the type of rhetoric I would like to see more engaging with. I would like to see more engagement on these types of programs from people as skilled as Gavin Newsom in getting across the policy priorities of the Biden administration, of his own administration in California, and pressing back against a lot of the narratives that are out there against about Biden administration. I'm happy with how I did here. This is really good. Arno QS, thank you so much for adding me with this link. What's this? Part 2?
Special edition.
Oh my gosh, did he just release this? This is fantastic. Well, we're watching this. Congrats, more debate.
Tax regulations, even Joe Biden's foreign policy. Here's that part of the conversation. This is my premise. Okay, I listen to you. I admire your passion. I do. And I look at your policies, and I look at your income tax, and I look at the migration, and I look at the crime, and I look at the homelessness, and I look at, you do have a big budget deficit this year. You had a surplus the last 2 years.
Massive.
COVID didn't hurt, COVID monies. And I look at the quality.
By the way, those surpluses were not,
by the way,
federal transfers. Not $1 of the 177 was federal transfers.
Let me just finish this. I lived in this state for 5 years.
Okay, so to be clear, yeah, Sean Hannity can promise not to interrupt, but he's allowed to interrupt. Gavin Newsom can make no such commitment, but he can't interrupt to add pertinent information. Okay.
And one of the most beautiful places on earth. I was the poorest person in Santa Barbara at the time. I had no money. And it is a beautiful location.
Yeah.
And I would argue respectfully, Governor, that if it weren't for the taxation, the regulation, if it weren't for the high cost of living, if it weren't for quality of life issues that we're discussing, if more conservative principles were applied on law and order, on the economy,
probably have higher
on less redistribution, which you seem to support, I would imagine wealthy companies and people would be less inclined to leave.
No.
You would disagree?
Yeah, look at the facts. We're on our way to be the 4th largest economy in the world. This belies all of that rhetoric, everything you just said. Look at the progress.
And that means California would have a larger economy than Germany, by the way, which they are on the path to doing.
Migration, but the migration numbers don't belie that?
They were anomalous in the last few years, and they've already slowed down. There's been 3 independent studies, Sean. You should take a look at them, including a brand new one from UCLA that has talked about fundamental reasons.
You're asking me to look at a UCLA study?
No, but the point, seriously? But my point is,
why don't we make it UC
I'm interested in the facts, not the assertions. I mean, again, we were number 10 on that list. You didn't talk about all those red states that have opposite policies that you embrace. Something clearly is not working right in those states.
Which states?
Mississippi. You've got Louisiana, West Virginia.
Oh, damn.
Had higher
He's naming names.
I'm happy to engage, continue.
You're talking on a per capita basis.
I'm talking on a per capita basis. By the way, I don't know what else matters.
Why would you compare it on anything else besides per capita? Because if it's like, wow, California lost 10,000 people, that's more than West Virginia's people. But that's because they have more people. Like, yeah, per capita would be how you would measure it.
More Floridians moving to California than Floridians that came from California.
But if you look at the cost of a U-Haul, and you take a U-Haul from Los Angeles or San Francisco to Texas, it's going to cost you about we looked into this, $2,000, $2,500. Now, if you take it,
time on something else.
If you take it, same U-Haul from Texas to California, you're paying $400 because you're doing U-Haul a favor.
There's no other state.
Say something?
There's no other state where more opportunity presents itself in the state of California. It's just a fact. I mean, look at our GDP growth. Look at our innovation. Look at the entrepreneurial spirit here. It's second to none. Look at our natural beauty. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
You're right about that. And I agree with you.
There were no new. We didn't just establish a 13.3% for the 1% tax.
It's been there 10 years.
It's been there 10 years. There's been no new tax increases. I've actually reduced the regulatory burden.
It's the highest in the country, Gavin.
You know, it's the highest for the 1%.
This is part of the reason why I don't like Newsom's, because of what he's saying right now. I think he's too milk toast on it.
And it hasn't stopped in the
like a fantastic economic engine is great, but you got to use it. You got to use the money that's produced from it to help resolve the homeless crisis, to help resolve these issues. And I think that would include a tax increase on the rich in California.
Sean, let's deal with that. In the last decade, since we established that tax rate, California's GDP has been 3.1%, the nation 2.1%. How do you square that circle?
It's interesting you say that. So Governor Cuomo once said, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. We taxed them, and they're leaving. I don't talk like that. I've never been saying tax the rich.
You just said it in this interview. I'll say it, tax the rich.
I said 10 years ago we had 13.3% for the 1%. Right. And I'm not ashamed by a progressive tax rate that actually protects middle class. I'm proud of the fact that we're protecting the middle class. I'm proud of the fact that working families are treated better in California than they are in conservative states and places like Texas. The bottom 10% are treated better in California than they are in Florida. Who are you for?
But who's paying that? Who's paying for the Medi-Cal $2.7 billion?
And the opportunities here are endless, and people move in from around the world for riches and new beginnings. This is a remarkable place. Some of the most iconic companies start.
Damn, he's making California sound hot, man.
Starting here, more IPOs, 1,000 IPOs in the last.
I'd bang California if it was a femboy.
Decade. How is that possible with that tax rate?
I hear.
Why did I say that? Don't clip that. Danabo, edit this out if you post this on YouTube. And if you don't edit this out, people have to shame him for editing it out, because I'm going to be shamed more. So you got to shame him as well.
Every talking,
3 times more than Florida. These are not talking points, they're facts.
I hear every point, I'll be fair, every point you're making. Yeah. But it does not.
Danabo, edit it out. You're in chat right now. I know you saw it. I know you saw it. You're editing it out.
Negate this fact. You are the only governor in the history of this state that has had significant erosion, a net loss of population.
0.3% during COVID. My gosh, come on.
No,
this is perspective.
This is
the last few years.
I just gave you 2021 and 2022 numbers.
The anxiety over the last few years. And by the way, I don't want to. If we want to get into these 3 independent studies about outmigration, and I gave you some
UCLA
facts
study
about. No, there's 3. Okay. That was one of them. That's the latest.
Yeah.
And I talked to you about how many Floridians per capita are moving more to California.
I'll up your ante with a Hoover Institute study. Is that fair?
Well, no, fair point. Yeah. And I appreciate a lot of the work they do, and a lot of it's just complete nonsense. Look, here's my point. I've been hearing these same points certainly from Fox for decades. You're on a doom loop about California.
No, I'm not a doom loop.
Why are you talking about the 9 out of 10 red states that have our
You know what I'd like to do
rates?
again? One time in my life, I took the Pacific Coast Highway. I rode the whole thing.
Spectacular.
Spectacular.
Yes.
Beautiful. Santa Barbara, I was poor, but I was happy. I loved it.
You can afford a house in Montecito now.
I probably could, actually. Yeah, I could. Which I could
lower
early.
property taxes.
I'm going to live right next to Harry and Meghan and Oprah. I'm sure they'll be happy. There goes the neighborhood. Hannity moved in. You know, I know we're not going to agree, but I just have a premise. I couldn't get 10% if I ran for governor in your state. Couldn't win 10% in New York either, where I live, unfortunately.
Maybe.
By the way,
if you change your policies, you can. I mean, you moderate them. Yeah, you moderate them. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned so many times about the 1% paying the 50% of the state income tax.
We're proud of that.
Fair enough.
No, we're proud of those entrepreneurs. We're proud of those dreamers. We're proud of those risk takers. I'm a small business person. I've started 21 companies, 1,000 employees.
You're a great businessman.
No, but it's like this is in my DNA. I'm passionate about that.
So
California never held me back. It gave me every opportunity in the world.
Right.
All these folks, Elon Musk, Tesla, exists because of California's regulatory framework.
Why are they moving their headquarters out of here? You know why?
They moved their R&D headquarters back.
To save money.
They moved their R&D world headquarters back just 3 weeks ago. Why did they do that?
The list is
Wasn't
a mile
to save
long.
money.
You can pick out one company.
There's no state doing more in R&D than California. That's the answer.
These companies are leaving for one reason.
These companies are starting for another reason.
They're moving to increase their profits and save money because you tax too much.
Because we created the conditions where they flourished. And then they get to a point of maturity, and they get a point of becoming multinational companies.
And they leave why? And they move their headquarters
because
why?
Some find greener pastures or are looking for defensive postures as it relates to economic risk. But there's thousands. We have 47% increase in business startups this year compared to last year.
Would you not acknowledge one of the
acknowledge the seeds that are planted every single year? It's almost a point of success. We birth these folks. They move out of the house, and thousands more are birthed every single year.
So they build their companies here.
That is an interesting way to pitch it. You can pitch it like, yes, you're welcome. California is an economic engine. We produce these companies. They grow to a certain size. Most of them stay, but some of them leave and go to your states. You're welcome. Let's see any of those states come out of Mississippi. That's what I would imagine Gavin Newsom. That seems to be his point, at least. It's an interesting line of dialogue. I haven't thought about it that way before.
And now all of a sudden they're paying that high tax bill. So they moved their headquarters away.
No, jeez. I mean,
by the way, do you support the idea?
This is the honest way to be the fourth largest economy in the world. What are you arguing for? Mississippi's economic policy? Literally, that's what you're arguing for.
Me, if I wanted
the great Sam Brownback's Kansas policy, it was a debacle. No economic growth. 71% of the GDP in America are in blue counties. I would 71% of the GDP in America are blue counties. Progressive policies.
Okay, that are paying high taxes, and
71% of the country's wealth. 7 of the top 10 dependent states.
Let's say you're
right.
Let's say you.
No, we're subsidizing your states, Sean, because of your policies.
I'm in New York. You're not subsidizing anything for me.
But your philosophy.
I'm getting the hell out of New York, though. Mississippi.
Dude, this wasn't even like close. This wasn't even like close. This Newsom like slaughtered him. Is Sean gotten worse, or is just Newsom just like this good in a hostile interview environment? Because I thought Hannity was good at, gotching people, was better at gotching people than this.
Mississippi, Alabama, I'm all for it over New York or California.
Right, yeah. I mean, I love Mississippi.
But what you say, I'm sure, look, this is not personal.
No, none of it.
But the point is, they build their, let's give you credit. You have entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley. By the way, San Francisco in the last 2 years lost 7.5% of the population. I'm sure you saw that article. But
that was him giving him credit?
Here's the point. I would argue these companies are leaving and they're moving.
How is that? Wait, how is that giving him credit?
Moving their headquarters, and they're moving employees, and they're going through that expense because regulation, taxation, it is stymieing the incentives to build businesses here. Now, I would argue to you that if you lowered taxes and lowered your regulation standards, that California would be a net migration state. But I know you're not going to agree with that.
I'm passionate about regulatory reform. I've got 11 regulatory bills on permitting and procurement. I've never taken a backseat to anyone. I've reformed our CEQA bills. I've done it as it relates to vegetation, forest management, related forest fires. Again, I'm not an ideologue on any of this. I've not argued for increased the tax rate for the top 1%. It's been around a decade. And look at the receipts.
You're not talking about lowering it.
Look at the receipts over the last decade in economic growth. We've outperformed most Western democracies. The state has grown, just like our American economy has grown by $4.4 trillion since Biden's been in office. Our global GDP continues to be dominant.
All of these
this country's doing remarkably better than I think a lot of your viewers believe.
Under no circumstances would you consider running for the Democratic nomination?
No.
None.
None. Not after this conversation.
No. What is this conversation? This is the worst interview you've had. That's a pretty... Listen, I want your passion. I'm just telling you, Joe Biden could not do what you're doing. And by the way, that ought to tell you something. And you know what? I know deep...
I couldn't do what he's done.
I know deep
Master
down...
class
I know
in the last 2.5 years of results.
I know deep down inside...
Damn, he is Team Biden, man. You cut him, he doesn't bleed red, he bleeds blue.
You know it's true, but you're a party guy. You're sticking up for your guy, and you know he's a cognitive
I love
mess.
my president.
I don't dislike him. I just want him out of office.
And of decency and character.
I want somebody that can stand up to China, Russia, Iran, and...
Okay, now he's getting a little too like 90s Bill Clinton. I love him, decent man. I love America. America's great. You know, he's sticking up for your party. No, I don't stand up for party. I stand up for America. Okay, it's getting a little too Clinton-y. Okay, reel it in.
North Korea. He's doing, I think, a master. We've united NATO in ways it's never been united. Russia's never been weaker.
How would you have handled the Chinese spy balloon? What would you have done?
Oh, come on. You know what?
What would you have
done? Russia has been weaker. Like 1991, 92, I would probably point. Maybe 95, 4 and 5. Those are probably peak fallout years. I would say that was probably weaker.
No, I don't have the details.
But besides literal complete economic catastrophe, yes.
Details of knowledge of the nuances.
Based on what you know, I would have taken that sucker out of the air before it even hit Florida airspace.
May have put a lot of people's lives at risk when they originally talked about it, and there was a reason they delayed those first attempts to do that. I think his containment policy has been thoughtful as it relates to China.
Based on him taking out one of our drones.
What you should acknowledge President Biden's policies are not completely dissimilar as it relates to China to what Trump was promoting as it relates to transfer of sensitive technology.
You know what? Ukraine wasn't invaded under Trump.
Dude, I'm sorry. Hannity started the interview, started the whole segment with, "Oh, he agreed on the only condition that I don't interrupt him and give him full answers." And interrupt. I'm just saying, man. Like, you can't open it up saying that like we're gonna do this. And he said it as it wasn't even pre-recorded. He said that live on his show, then cut to the interview, meaning that he knew he interrupted and still even commented that was the thing that it was requested from Gavin Newsom.
China wasn't saber rattling.
Russia's never been weaker.
China wasn't saber rattling under Trump? Are you? It was part of the reason why Xi kept getting Trump to bring back higher and higher ranking U.S. officials that were visiting China. Anytime Xi Jinping would call him, Trump would get terribly angry at his staff saying, why do we have so-and-so American official in Taiwan talking to the Taiwanese government? Pulled him back. At one point, he got so angry, he said, I'm sick of hearing about fucking Hong Kong and Taiwan. I don't know, man. I don't know if you could say out of nowhere, China's just completely started saber rattling. They were still violating Taiwanese airspace at the time. There were still the freedom of navigation operations going on in the South China Sea. That started under Obama. And they were getting angry and responding to that angrily during Obama's term in office, during Trump's term in office, and during Biden's term in office. I don't think the situation has dramatically changed too much.
Our alliance has never been stronger. G7's never been stronger.
They're confronting our Navy in the South China Sea and the Pacific.
They did that under Obama, Trump, and Biden.
They're confronting our fighter jets in international airwaves.
They did that under Trump and Biden. I'm sorry, man. Like, everything he's saying is stuff that happened under Trump. I don't know if he just has short-term memory.
Spying over our country, drones.
Whoa! The Chinese are spying on our country for the first time. I had no clue. I mean, aren't these the people that talk about Eric Swalwell and Fang Fang all the time? I I don't know. There was a decent amount of spying during the Obama administration. And if you want to talk, I mean, during Obama administration, during Trump administration, during Biden administration, during every administration, okay? But if you want to talk about spying, you want to know something that just gives a Chinese spy a big old grin on their face? Finding out that the former president of the United States is illegally keeping classified documents in his bathroom and showing it to random people with no classification requirements. Just sounds like an easy job, doesn't it? And unsecured in a bathroom? Just saying.
Are being taken out by Russia.
They're flexing.
And Joe, you know what
They're
Joe did?
flexing around
You know
the
what the
globe.
consequences were? Nothing.
Yeah.
Would you allow nothing to be a consequence for China and Russia if they did that?
I think his policies against China have been very impressive in terms
Impressive?
of
In what way?
in the context of
Why stop interrupting him? Jesus Christ. I'm so sick of Hannity, man.
building, ironically, on some of Trump's policies without all the bluster.
Like, don't ask a question and then when he tries to whatever.
As it relates to tech transfer, as it relates to building alliances in the Pacific, as it relates to
building alliances. Their defense secretary rejected our outreach to meet with his counterpart.
You know, these are situational challenges.
But we're not making an alliance with the Chinese, so why would that matter in reference to building alliances with, like, Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia, the transfer of nuclear submarine technology to the Australians and to other nations in order to strengthen the alliance structure in the air. Whatever. I'm not gonna get too into it. I'm just, this interview's been going on for a while. I'm just gonna let it roll.
Challenges that we've had historically.
I don't want to. I'm foreign policy brained. I don't want to get too triggered.
Around the globe as it relates
their
to our
Navy
adversaries.
Confronting our Navy. Their
Can we talk about 200 and these guys have less than $300 billion to spend every year on the military. America's at 887
They've been building up their military for a decade.
How many military bases around the world does China have?
Oh snap! Oh snap! He's now pulling on, like, he's pulling on those graphics they have in the back of his mind of, like, all the NATO bases around the world, half of them non-existent. But he is right. I think China has a base in Djibouti, and I don't know where else. I think Djibouti. I think they have, like, maybe 3 bases around the world compared to our, like, hundreds.
Sean,
how about the exact number? I wouldn't know.
Djibouti,
we don't know.
1.
Okay,
but we have 7.
Okay, so I even know exactly. I knew exactly where it was too. So it's 1.
750.
China
I'm worried about what's happening in Cuba.
Okay, China's now extended its sphere of influence in Africa, in Latin America.
They've one treaty arrangement, and that's in North Korea. We have 50 around the globe. I mean, it's apples and oranges.
Okay, now Gavin, he's being a little disingenuous now, and now he's underselling it.
Spend 10 times more than the next 10 countries on military spend every year. Our alliances have never been stronger in places like Australia. Which
the Chinese government does have alliances, or like not like alliances in the traditional stuff, but security arrangements with a ton more countries outside of North Korea. I think he's underselling the growing, like, not only the growing Chinese military budget, but the investments they are making specifically to challenge U.S. power in the region. The difference between the United States and China, and this is, if it was just all of America's military assets versus all of China's military assets in one big arena, we'd win every time, of course. But we have assets in this Pacific that would be confronting China in a confrontation. They have the entirety of their assets invested into the Pacific, or at least the vast majority of their assets invested into the Pacific. We also have resources in the Middle East, Europe, Africa, South America, like all across the world, and we're pouring resources into the Ukrainian struggle for liberation. So I don't want to understand, like, oh, it's no big issue. The Chinese are like, they're so far behind us. I don't want to oversell it, because some people are like, China's going to take over the world in 10 years, right? Or China's going to invade Taiwan in the next 2 years, and there's nothing we can do. But I also don't want to undersell it.
Sonic missile threats. What about
all these are concerns?
If you were president and China wants to fulfill their territorial ambition and take Taiwan, what would you do?
I'm not going to get into that. Why? That's a more nuanced and complicated thing. That's for a presidential aspirant to answer. We have a policy. It's well articulated. I stand by the current American policy.
You're going to be convinced to be one, but that's my theory.
We can talk Ukraine next time.
Yes! I'm sorry.
We got more of my interview with Governor Gavin.
Skip. Give me the last piece of the interview. Come on. How much? Jesus. Here we are.
Take a look. How much is enough in terms of the amount of money that government takes all across the board? Now,
oh, I thought they were about to start talking about Ukraine. I wanted them to talk about Ukraine for a second, but now thinking about it, I don't. Then again, it's Sean Hannity and Gavin Newsom. It wouldn't get too toxic, I don't think.
If you live in California and you're part of that evil 1% or the top 15%.
You're not the evil 1%. We thank you.
We thank you for giving me all your money.
No, we thank you for hiring people that do a free enterprise.
Do the math.
Thank you.
Do the math with me. 40% federal income tax, the highest marginal rate, and Biden wants it higher. 13.3, so that's 53.3 cents. Okay. Sales tax around 7%. And you got these millionaire taxes now. They put new laws in effect in L.A., for example. $10 million house is going to cost you, what, $500,000 in a tax just to sell your house?
Transfer tax.
Okay, that's insane.
Okay, by the way, I opposed them when I was mayor.
I mean, it's crazy when you got a big tax on your $15 million house, working class problems.
So my question is, how much out of every dollar should even the wealthiest of wealthiest get to keep? Because when you die,
I'm gonna have to sell. I can't even sell my $15 million homes anymore, man. Biden's America, without a tax. Crazy.
The government comes in and takes half of it. How much, or 40%? How much does the state of California have for a death tax?
I don't know. When Ronald Reagan was governor, living in here.
I'm asking when Gavin Newsom's president.
No, let me just say this.
Gavin Newsom's governor. There's a slip of the tongue.
We're talking about debt and deficits. Issues of entitlements, issues of spending.
No.
And tax cuts. Something has to give.
I asked
something has to give.
How much out of every dollar?
Can't have it all.
Clearly.
And by the way, that answer.
By the way,
is
you know what I pay my
There's
taxes?
no black or white on that. There's no. It should be this for everybody. There's different conditions, different states.
So for the top 15-20% of people that make the most money, how much out of every dollar they make should they be able to keep at the end of the day, all taxes?
If I'm the president of the United States, I have one answer to that. I'm governor. I have another answer. I'm mayor. I have another.
I'm looking for your philosophy.
I believe in progressive tax policy, not regressive.
Wait, how did? No, you weren't. You weren't looking for his philosophy. You were asking for a specific number, like a tax number for everyone. And he's like, I don't have a tax number for everyone. Number one, there's like what would be federal taxes and local taxes, and not to mention it's a complicated issue. Like you usually don't have like a specific number for the. He wasn't asking. He shifted his question, but he wasn't asking for his philosophy on it, which would have been a better question, by the way. But I'm happy we've moved to that.
Of tax policy. I believe in doing what we can to protect the middle class and working families. How much out of every
dollar should people keep?
Those that have done well, it should pay.
See, there it is. He's like, he's like, he did that within 5 seconds of saying that he wanted an answer on philosophy. He's asking for specific. What's the exact number that everyone should be paying out of their taxes? Of course, they don't have that because everyone's different and it's different between federal, local. Well, actually, no. I'm asking about your philosophy. Okay, well, here's my philosophy answer. Anyway, how much out of every tax should every dollar, how much should they be taxed? Again, it just went back to it. Do you want his philosophy, or do you want the specific number that you know he can't pull out of nowhere? Because he would need to look at the specific person and what their income was and what they spent their money on, and if they spent their money back and invested it back into their business, or if they put it into stock buybacks, or what it was. It would depend on a whole host of factors. There's not any like one number.
More.
Give me
and
a
you
number.
know what? And I don't begrudge their success.
Out of every dollar they make,
I aspire to be them. I love these folks.
Out of every dollar they make, how much should they be able to keep?
I don't know. They were surviving with 70% tax rates under Ronald Reagan, the guy who used to live in this building.
Okay, he dropped.
And you know what? We had the most vibrant
the top marginal rates to 28%, the lowest.
I understand that. But in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we were the tempo of the world economy in a way that was unimaginable.
We built the world's largest recession, double-digit interest rates, inflation. He gave us the longest at the time period of peacetime economic growth
and trickle-down economics,
and created 21 million new jobs.
Yeah, and a lot of exacerbated conditions that we're still trying to deal with as it relates to injustice.
You're going back to blame Reagan?
No, I'm not blaming Reagan for everything. A lot of Democrats do. In fact, I aspire on gun policy to be Ronald Reagan, who said AK-47s should not be used for defense, and he believes in background checks.
You ever shot an AK-47?
Not only AK-47, AR, different platforms, M16s. I shot a Gatling gun, a 50 caliber.
what AR means?
I've murdered so many people. I'm sorry. I like the idea that he's talking about these in combat scenarios. I've mowed down so much Taliban you wouldn't even believe it, Mr. Sean Hannity. The things I've seen, I can't close my eyes for more than 5 seconds. Every day I go to sleep, not through sleeping, but just by blacking out, getting blackout drunk because of the things I've seen with my AKs and my M16s. I like that idea. That'd be a fun Gavin Newsom arc. PTSD. That's not fun. I don't know why I said that's fun. I'm demented. Ignore me.
You know what I shot?
You actually know what AR means?
I shot a musket.
You shot.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get the. It's amazing, right? I mean, with all due respect,
do you get a deer with a musket?
These weapons of war don't need a deer in their sights. They are weapons.
By the way,
of war.
I follow. I'm an avid gun. By the way, when I lived here, I had a legal license to carry.
Did you?
I did.
Ronald Reagan.
I've carried my whole adult life.
Open carry laws. He was the first.
I'm not open. I close carry.
I know, different.
Very different.
By the way, the states with those laws have higher gun
I read your constitutional amendment. I am actually a gun safety nut.
Love that.
Okay? My mom was a prison guard, and she had a revolver on her nightstand. Right. And she knew I was a pretty curious and, let's say, incorrigible child. And
damn, she wanted you to go. She left it out for you to go cap yourself as a child? That's a very tragic backstory.
The odds were that I was going to touch it. And my dad was a family court probation officer, but they took me at like 10 or 11 years old and brought me to a range and taught me
Oh, okay, never mind. Never mind, I misinterpreted it.
Firearm safety.
Love it.
And I sat there that day, and then the guy says, repeat back everything I said. Gun down range, how to deal with a jam gun, never pointed at anybody, it's all the rules, and how to clear it. And he said, okay, you did great. If you come back next week, and you can tell me all that, I'll let you fire the gun. He wouldn't let me fire it. You know what it did? When I first fired it, it taught me respect for safety.
Yeah.
And
I love that spirit, Sean. I'm all for that. I'm for common sense.
But don't tell me I can't have an AR-15 when it's not any different than most other guns except cosmetically.
It's not me to tell. I mean, your own Fox News poll says 87% of people want background checks. They believe if you can buy a beer, can't buy a beer, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun.
We have universal background checks.
Well, I don't know what this argument for Gavin is. And plus, I'm not a gun grabber. I'm not a gun banner. I'm not like super, I don't really even want to ban the AR-15. I don't think that's really much of a solution. But the question was about banning the AR-15, right? Wait, go back. Let me listen to this again.
Respect for safety.
Yeah.
And
I love that spirit, Sean. I'm all for that. I'm for common sense.
But don't tell me I can't have an AR-15 when it's not any different than most other guns except cosmetically.
It's not me to tell. I mean, your own Fox News poll says 87% of people want background checks.
But that is not an AR-15 ban, right? A background check is not an AR-15 ban. These are two different things. The majority of people on Fox News polls would not say they want to ban the AR-15.
Believe if you can buy a beer, can't buy a beer, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun.
We have universal background checks.
We don't have it in terms of the gun show loophole closures. We don't have it at the extent we can't have it.
And more Hannity coming up right after this.
That's enough, but even with the extended version, Gavin still kind of swept the floor with him, man. It wasn't really even close. It was honestly kind of hard to watch.